Good morning, everyone. Today, I get to speak with Diana Steadman, who is a yoga instructor. Her yoga website is yogawithdiana.ca. And so you can check out her schedule and visit her yoga classes. But we're not necessarily talking about yoga today. We're talking about gardening. And as far back as I can remember, Diana was really passionate about eating fresh foods, whole foods, and growing her own. And she actually was teaching children all about healthy eating when my children were little and her children were little as well. So I'm excited to speak with you, Diana. Welcome.
Thank you, Anne. It's lovely to be here. Oh my goodness. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And so where did this passion for fresh food begin for you?
Wow. Well, I grew up in, my mom loved to cook and she was motivated to eat healthy. She went through all the different fads and the different trends, the like no fat trend, and we ate low fat dairy everything. And, we've learned over the years. She's just an incredible cook and really inspired me at a young age to learn how to create beautiful meals for people that I love. We were always having family over and celebrating birthdays and different anniversaries, and she was a great cook, and I love all my experiences cooking with her. We still get together. Well, we didn't this year because of COVID, but we get together and we do preserving in the summer, and we like cook up a storm. And yeah, my mom.
Yeah, that's a beautiful connection to have with healthy food.
Yeah.
So when was your first garden that you planted yourself?
Well, it would be, my husband sort of started things off, and I initially didn't really have a lot of interest there. Like, gardening for me wasn't something that I grew up with, believe me. So my husband kind of started things off when we first moved to Kempville. And then there was one summer, or one spring, I should say, where I really got interested in it and started to like purchase seeds in, February, March, and start planting seeds. And that summer, I don't know if it was ideal timing to start a garden because we were building a new home and moving that, June sort of time frame into the home. So I spoke to the builder and asked, can I come like earlier, like in May, June, to come and plant these seeds? So there was people literally finishing building our house when I was showing up with all my plants and planting them in the back and trying to come every week with buckets of water to water all these plants. And that I would say is where I learned my number one piece of advice for people is to really start small, like start with something really, choose one plant. I went overboard that summer and really learned a lot about, the value of starting small and taking things step by step. So, yeah.
So how big is your garden now?
Well, it's bigger than our house. We figure it's about 1,800 square feet.
Wow, holy.
Yeah.
And what do you grow? What kind of?
We grow like a good mix of all kinds of veggies. I love the tomatoes, like different varieties of tomatoes that you just, you can't find in the store. Heirloom varieties that are great. Sunflowers every year. I love the sunflowers. They bring, all the pollinators to the garden.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
snap peas. Like, I love my snap peas. Yeah.
Nice.
All kinds of things. Yeah. Fresh herbs. Love it.
Yes. Yeah. You can just go in the garden, pick something, and then cook it for supper.
Yes. Yeah. When you slice into something and it's dripping, like the moisture content is so, and it's so flavorful. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the best, especially in the summer and winter. This, like a tomato in the winter is not, it's not the same creature at all as in the summer, where it's just so juicy and full of flavor.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about composting, and I was very excited because we compost. We've been composting for years, and when I say that, I mean we have an area where we throw scraps of food, but then we never do anything with it. It's just like this area that the dogs are desperate to get into because it's just got so much stuff going on. So how do you do it? How do you compost?
Well, now we compost in 3 ways, with the new green bin that the municipality brought in. That's been awesome because now we don't put any food in our garbage. So like meat and stuff like that, that goes in the green bin. It goes off to be processed.
Mhm.
And then we have a second bin for all of our veggie scraps, and that sort of thing. And that goes out to, we have 2 tumbling bins that my husband built, and he found the design on YouTube, and it was relatively easy to build, but basically 2 big olive barrel bins that tumble and aerate and compost the bulk of our veggie scraps. And then we use that in the garden. But the one way of composting that I absolutely love is worm composting. And so we do that in our basement.
So explain what do you do? How does that work?
Well, it's really simple. So if anybody has ever been thinking about, maybe I want to explore worm composting, definitely give it a try because it is very simple. And with the right setup and the key ingredients, you can be composting like right away. And over the years, we've been composting for about 5 years, and we've never had any problems with smell or problems with pests or anything like that. So yeah, as kind of creepy as it sounds to have a bin of worms in your basement, it's been really easy. And the thing that I enjoy the most about it is when I go to start my seeds in the spring indoors, like the improvement in how these plants are growing and what they're able to produce in terms of yields. It's just really taken my gardening game to a whole new level. So yeah,
So how does one start worm composting? Like where do you even begin?
yeah. So well, I got my worms off Kijiji. So it's easy to find worms. Just do a quick search on Kijiji or some other market place and search for red wigglers. That's the species of worm that you want, red wigglers. They're a little smaller than earthworms. And get maybe a half pound to start. Cost about $40 maybe for a half pound. And then you just go on YouTube or some other video sharing program where you can learn about how to build a bin, or you can purchase a bin even online. There's all different styles of worm composters. One of the basic, most simple designs involves a couple of those large Rubbermaid totes. And you just drill some holes in it for aeration and holes for drainage, and it's a really simple design. But yeah, you gotta get some kind of bin system going, and then yeah, it's really easy. You put down a bed of peat moss or coconut husk could work. You add some moisture to your bin. That's really important because the worms need that in order to be able to breathe. The soil needs to stay moist. You put your worms in, a little bit of sand, and then keep a nice moist bedding of ripped up newspaper. So you just shred some newspapers, put that on top, keep it nice and moist, and feed your worms once a week. That's it. One little, container of veggie scraps once a week, and that's all the maintenance that they need. And
So
yeah.
that's half a pound of worms.
Yeah, depending on the size of bin that you start with, half a pound. If you had a larger bin, you could go with a pound, but yeah.
Okay. So then how long do you have to be doing that before you can use the compost in your garden?
Well, that's a good question. So I believe we started our bin in January years
Okay.
ago. And then by March, April, when it was time to start seeds, there was, there was enough that you could get going. So a couple of months maybe, and then you
Right.
can,
All right.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
exciting. It's so like alive, right? I mean, you've got these live worms and then you're putting them in your garden and you're creating these beautiful produce that you're going to eat. So it's kind of, it's cool. It's cool to have the live worms helping you get delicious produce.
yeah, yeah. And then the castings that you take from it are alive too, right? They're loaded up with like microorganisms like bacteria and fungi. And when you apply that to your plant's root system in the garden, it's so beneficial in so many ways. Like compared to ordinary soil, worm castings
Yeah.
have 5 times the amount of nitrogen, 7 times the amount of phosphorus, 11 times the amount of potassium. They're super rich. It's
Mm,
like a small bag of castings, like a bag this big, would cost like $18 because it's so rich, and the nutrients that are in that compost are really easily absorbed by your plants. Um, it's kind of like breast milk, eh? It's like just perfectly designed for a baby. Casting
mm,
worm poop is just perfectly designed for your plants to absorb the nutrients. It helps with water retention, and yeah, it's
mhm.
really good. Really good.
And so do you do all year or do you just get worms and start over? Like, do you just keep going with the same worms or and you add new ones or how does that work?
Yeah, I just keep going with the same ones, and they'll continuously reproduce in there. And you can even see when you're examining the castings, you can see little tiny egg sacs that the worms leave behind. So you can see these worms reproducing in your bin. And so,
Oh.
yeah, it really takes off. It can really take off. And yeah, you get a continuous supply all year. So if you have house plants, in
Mhm.
the middle of the winter when things are kind of like, ooh, like sad, right? You
Yes.
just buy a little bit of worm castings around the plant and water it, and it comes right back to life. So yeah.
That is so
All
cool. I
yeah.
bet your sons think you're the coolest house ever for having the worms in the basement.
They want nothing to do with the worms.
No?
They will
I
feed.
imagine like how cool it'd be like, we have worms in our basement. No way.
Yeah, well, when I was running my nature camps, the kids that would come to camp, of course, they were super impressed and really found it really neat and loved to like pick up the worms and like examine them and learn about the anatomy and stuff. But no, my boys are like, "Mm, I want nothing to do with it."
That's funny.
You know
Uh,
how when it's your own kids, right?
yeah, yes, I know firsthand. But so that's really cool. So do you ever use manure or just like you don't need it?
I do. I for my potting mix and stuff that I make up, I do use usually a bit of sheep manure that's been
Yeah.
composted.
Is that the best one or
Not necessarily. Some people like to use like llama manure, and
okay?
trying to think of some others. I've just chosen sheep manure because
Yeah.
that's, but I use a combo of like peat moss, sheep manure, and then worm castings, and then some, some additional add-ins for moisture retention and stuff. But
Hmm.
the nice thing about worm castings compared to other manures is that they're not like the acidity in them is not too high. They're kind of perfectly matched to what your plants need. So you can
Right.
apply directly to your plants without worrying about like potentially burning off your plants or something. So like some manures need to be composted first before you apply them, and worm castings are ready to go and you can put them right on your plants. So yeah.
Hmm. That's really cool. I'm glad that learning about this because I think we're going to get more involved in gardening this year. We certainly tried last year. We did great with the tomatoes. Some of like herbs and tomatoes, we do great. And then I planted strawberries and it was like crickets. Like there was nothing happening. And that's what my daughters were actually excited about was the strawberries. Like, oh, we're gonna have fresh strawberries. It just, yeah, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So what are some of your tips, like the top 5 tips for people who've never gardened before and they're all gung ho. And as you said, don't start too big, right? Um, so what are your like top 5 tips that you would give?
Yeah, my first always is start small. Start small. Like choose a couple of plants that you want to try, do some reading about them,
Mhm.
try it out for a year, see how it goes. I find that every year I'm learning something new, or learning many things new about the garden. And even when you're designing and laying out, sort of creating your garden, start with a really small footprint. Like, don't do what we did. The
Yeah,
first year we lived in this house, don't do what we did. It was pandemonium, it was crazy. Start small, and then you'll just sort of see over the years, like this past summer, for example, for our tomato plants, we went from using a bamboo stake to stake up the plants to
okay,
using like a metal stake. It costs more money, but it does
right,
a better job.
okay,
So each year it's kind of like we get one new thing for the garden,
right,
one year put in a bit of a watering system.
mhm,
So each year you just kind of build on a little bit more, and it's neat to see the evolution of your garden that way. It happens
right,
slowly for many years. That's my number one for sure.
okay,
Um, yeah, yeah, plant what interests you, and if you're growing with your children, involve them. Like, go to a seed swap exchange day. Like, there's all kinds of seedy Sundays that'll be coming up here in the next, well, they might even be starting now.
okay,
But go to a seed swap or a local nursery and let your children pick out some seeds that they want to try growing. But maybe just one kind, like not too many. That's the thing. Just keep it small. But yeah, getting your children interested and letting them see, like, right from the start, like, this is how we plant the seeds, and then they see them germinate, and taking care of them outside. And yeah, involve your children in that seed selection. It can be really fun. One summer, my youngest Colin chose to grow this variation of cucumber called soy long or something like that. Anyways, it's a curly cucumber. It's like an English cucumber in how it tastes, but it actually can curl a little bit as it's growing. And now it's my favorite cucumber to grow. So
neat.
yeah, yeah. Any other big tips? I'm trying to think, man. Um, Yeah, maybe, speak to people in this community that there is a local, for your local viewers and listeners. The Kempville Gardeners is a Facebook group, with all kinds of local growers on there, and so people that are so willing to give information and helpful tips. And anytime you run into a problem, it's a good place to go to say, like, what's going on with my plant, or I've discovered a new pest and I don't know how to deal with it. Really useful to find a local source of information so that you can, because things are different depending on which growing area, which zone you're growing in. And
Yeah,
so to find a local source of information is really helpful. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great. That's
Yeah.
helpful. Um, Before we wrap up, what about your yoga? What classes do you have? Just so people can look you up and
Yeah, thanks, Anne. Yeah. I'm teaching 4 classes a week right now online on the Zoom platform. Um, there's a range of different classes. There's some, the Tuesday and Thursday mornings are great because it's in all levels, half a class. So, anybody can come and enjoy it. Really, all the classes that I offer, I try to make sure that I'm offering lots of modifications and variety of poses, so that it's accessible to all people, all types, all levels of experience. Will find enjoyment in my classes. But yeah, I've this pandemic hit, and I lost the opportunity to teach, which is what I love.
mm,
And a friend of mine came to me and said, "Would you teach me a class online?" And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what the first thing about teaching online. But I sort of embraced my fear and jumped in and started offering classes. And, it's been a real saving grace for me and for the students who are coming. We chat before class starts, we chat after class starts. I think all of us are just craving that connection to other people. And as much as my students are getting benefit out of the classes, I'm getting so much benefit from being able to just connect with so many people each week. So
Mhm.
yeah, the classes are going strong, and if you want to check one out, the first class is always free. So just,
Yay.
shoot me an email, or you can find me on my social media page. It's yoga 2 e's, yoga number 2 e's.
Mhm.
And I'd love to connect with you for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. I'll put a link at the bottom to your yogawithdiana.ca and then your Facebook page as well, so
Okay.
people can connect with. But I appreciate the information about composting and gardening. I'm really intrigued about worms now. I don't know how my husband will feel about me saying I'm getting a quarter pound of worms or whatever, but um, I'll let you know how it turns out for sure.
Yes, do it. Do let me know if you do start doing it. I'd love to hear it. And if any of your viewers have questions, just feel free to send me an email or a message on social media. And, I'm happy to help out new avid gardeners for sure.
Thank you so much, Diana.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. This was
Bye.
great.